Beginner laser project number 26, cutting and engraving leather, and I've had a lot of requests on to do a video on this, so here's a piece of leather, uncut. Here's a piece of leather cut. And one of the finished products, and what this whole video is going to entail, is making key fobs. And here's one right here. Put that down. Give it a little bit closer look at a few of these. So here's just a few examples of what you can do, and there'll be several patterns you can choose from. And I will show you how to do this all step by step. Okay, for this particular video demonstration project, whatever, I'm using the Xtool D1, and it is not a new Xtool D1. I've had this one for a few years, and it has had a ton of use. So it may look a little worn and dusty and grimy, and it's got my own custom air assist on it, my own custom drag chain, because back when I got this air assist that you just couldn't get, you had to kind of make your own. So give you an idea how many years I've had this. Another question I'm probably going to get is, why do you have two honeycomb boards stacked up? Well, the reason is I use this laser for something entirely different, and I've got risers on it for that extra height because I was engraving on some thick material. Instead of going through the hassle of taking the risers off and everything and then having to reset it back up later, I just stacked another honeycomb board on top of the one that was already on there, so I don't have to mess with the risers. That gives me my focus height. Makes it easy to adjust. Okay, next is material. You will need leather. Here is a piece of tan cowhide, and this one has to be brown. The one I've been cutting on there was black. Make sure you are getting leather and not pleather. Pleather is a plastic vinyl imitation leather, and it is not only really bad for you to breathe, it generally melts instead of cuts, and certain types can generate chlorine gas, which is not only not good for you to breathe, it will also corrode every metal part on your laser. So stay away from pleather. Make sure it is actual genuine leather. Next thing is, I buy these and they come rolled up. So when you unroll them, they'll want to roll back up again. What I do is I just put them in one of our heat presses for about 10 seconds on about 250 degree heat, and it flattens them right out, just like that. You could also do it with an iron. Just put a piece of butcher paper or something over the surface so you don't get any type of tanning oils or anything on your iron or on the ironing board underneath. So there's some little hints. So now, how do you get one of these laid out? How do you do this? Go to the computer, and show you how. It's really easy. So how does all this work? Well, it's not all that tough. I've got a couple of examples in here, and I'll make this file available. You won't have the graphics in it, but you'll have the patterns, and you can put in whatever type of graphic you want. I'm using the Xtool D1. It's a 10 watt laser. My cuttings for the fill, I'm using offset fill, is 6,000 millimeters per minute at 50% power. And for the cut on this particular thickness of leather, you need to measure your thickness and do some tests, is 500 millimeters per minute at 100% power with 2 passes. Show that to you over here. So to make one of these, let me get this guy out of the way. I'll just drag him over. There's 2 different types of tags here, as I've shown you here. One has the separate piece for the little flap where you would go over to put in your rivet or snap to hold the ring. The other one is in this pattern here and this pattern down here. This is a one piece that this one here folds over itself. So you can see I made this one for the shed, and it'll say shed on both sides, and once that's folded, it usually stays together pretty well. If you wanted it to, you could stitch that, and you can also make them larger and smaller. So for now, let's grab this one here, and I'll stick it in here, and I'll just set it in the middle. Put that in the center. We want to put some kind of text in there. Just for an example here, we'll put in the word house. And you could use somebody's name, or you could do whatever you wanted to with it. And you can use whatever font you want. So I want to turn this 90 degrees. set that down in here. Yeah, I'm a little bit crooked there. That's pretty good. That could be a little bit bigger. So let's change our height here to 1.5. Make sure your little padlock's locked or you'll make your font look funny. So, and that flap's going to come down. It'll cover up part of the E. So we want to lower this just a little bit. So, all I need to do is get this laid out on a piece of leather and cut it out. And as I said, there's some other shapes here, and here's an oval. Here's one if you want to look like you're in a cheap motel. And of course we have the circle with the tab and the rectangle with the tab. Just something to kind of get you started with. You can make any kind of your own shapes. Here's another one that is similar to the one I just did here with the house, but this one folds over so you could have text on both sides. So we'll get going on the laser here. Okay, the settings I'm using here for the offset, I'm using offset fill because it fills a little bit quicker. It's 6,000 millimeters per minute at 50% power. And it doesn't matter what thickness your leather is for that, the engraving will be the engraving. The cutting part, you need to measure the thickness of your leather. This piece here is 1.6 millimeter. The piece I have laying on there right now is 1.2 millimeter. That's close enough to still use the same cut at 500 millimeters per minute, using 100% power here mostly because this laser has had so much use and so many hours on it that the head is not like it used to be. So you'll need to do some testing on your own. But measure the thickness of your leather and make those compensations from there. So another thing with leather is it's not cheap. So you want to make the most of your work. Once you have your project laid out as I do here, you're going to want to frame that and make the best use of your material. I have this about in the right location here. Of course, if you're not familiar with an Xtool D1, the home position is in the upper left corner, not the lower left corner, like a lot of other brands of lasers. The red LED cross you see there when it frames, that's where it's going to be cutting. Just something to keep in mind. So I'm going to frame this here. I think I got the leather in a pretty close proximity to where I want it. So everything looks good there. I'll just hit start. Of course, it will do the fill first. Always do your fill before you do your cuts. Don't ever do it the other way around, because if you're cutting something small, it may move, and then it'll throw your engraving off. Total time for this little key fob here is 1 minute and 48 seconds. That includes the engraving and the cutting. Yes, you could also engrave on, for example, a belt, if you wanted to engrave somebody's name on it. Very, very easy to do. Just get it set up and make sure that the ends are anchored down so things don't move. So this is cutting the little holes for where the rivet's going to go. And this is pretty close to cutting it in one pass. However, I like to do 2 passes because there could be some odd grains in leather where you are cut all the way through almost everywhere. Then you go to take the project off and find out you're snagged up somewhere. Although you could cut that with an X-Acto knife, it will show where you made that cut. That's why I like to do 2 passes here with this. If you have a newer laser, it doesn't have a whole ton of hours on it, you probably don't need to use this high of power or this slow of a speed. So there it is. It should fall right out of there. It does. Okay, I'll show you what we need to do next. What we're going to need to do here is fold this over like so, and we're going to need to put a rivet through there. So I've got my little rivet here. We'll start with one side is finished and one side is not, like this here, as you can see. So the unfinished side was going to go on the back side here. Poke that through the hole. And this is made to be a tight fit. Then we'll just fold this over. We'll pass it through the other hole. If you're using a split ring, you may want to put the ring in ahead of time. I'm not using a split ring here. I'm using a different type. So then I'll put the cap on it. I'm going to set here. So there it is. All I need to do is put my ring in there. I'm using this style ring mostly because I have a whole bunch of these, and you could conceal the hinge part inside there. So there would be a key fob for your house. All right, next question I'm going to get is, where did I get this? This is for setting rivets and snaps and leather. It's made by the craft tool company of Fort Worth, Texas. Quality guaranteed. Well, the thing is, I bought this when I was a young teenager. So I've had this a long time. I know there's other kits you can get out there from leather shops and craft shops and stuff, but if somebody is going to ask where this came from, that's where it came from, a long time ago. I'll make one more here just to kind of give you an idea on this. This is a round key fob with a pentacle in it. These are quick to make. This one here will take 3 minutes because it's got a lot more engraving to do. This is something you could make some money with your laser. You can customize these key fobs for all kinds of different people, put their names on them, put their particular car make on them. I'd be careful about using commercial logos like Chevrolet or Ford or GMC or Dodge or any of those, because those are copyrighted images. But if they have a patent name for their vehicle, you can certainly put that on there and sell those. No violations there. It's also be very popular with motorcycle people, especially in the Harley-Davidson line. But there again, you're going to have to be careful about using corporate logos without getting permission if you're going to be selling them. So where do you get the little rivets that I'm using on these? And the rings, you can get those, oh, I'm sure you can get them on Amazon. You can buy anything on Amazon. I've seen these at Hobby Lobby. And the rings, you can even, the little split rings, you can get at hardware stores, all kinds of places to get those. Some places give away keychains that you don't really want, but you can certainly use a split ring off of it. There's different size rivets, and some of them or even have real fancy looking faces on them. I have some in one of my drawers somewhere that have kind of a pearl look to them. Of course, there's brass, there's nickel, there's stainless steel. A lot of different things you can do. Now, I know somebody's going to ask, does this make smoke? Well, not really. There is a little bit from the cutting operation and engraving. You probably still want to be in a pretty good ventilated area, because when you are engraving and cutting leather, it smells like burning hair. And if you've ever smelled burning hair, hopefully you don't like it, but it's not the most pleasant thing in the world to be around. I do have my shop door cracked open a little bit. It's a little bit warmer out there today. Temperature in the 40s, so I can have the door open a hair. It still makes it pretty chilly here in the shop. Something you have to keep in mind is there's going to be a black soot around the edges. That's why my fingers are a little bit black. So be careful you don't get that smeared all over the place. Although it does kind of give the leather an antique-y look. Okay, since we're actually going through 3 layers of leather here now, I need to use a slightly longer rivet. Mine happens to be brass in this case. So I don't have any nickel ones this long. So again, through the outer part of the first layer, the finish out. That'll come in through the back. You could also make these double layer if you wish, or you could stitch them together. There's a lot of different things you could do. And this will fold back over on the front. The cap goes on top. Set that on the proper stud. There the rivet's set, and I'll just add the ring. So there's a few examples of what you can do with key fobs. Okay, next question I know I'm going to get is, where do you get your leather? Well, lots of places you can get it. The Hobby Lobbies have it. It's expensive. Other craft stores like Michael's, they have it. It's expensive. Tandy Leathercraft has it. It's expensive. Get it on Amazon. Not quite as expensive, but it's still up there. So where do I get it? TEMU of all places. It's TEMU.com. You got to be careful what you're buying there, but you can get these 12-inch square pieces of leather, I mean really cheap. And it's real leather, and it's really tan leather. It's not pleather or any of that artificial stuff. It does come rolled up. And as I said, it needs to be flat before it'll work on the laser, especially when you're cutting, because it can't have waves and it's got to lay flat. And if it's already set up to be flat, you don't have to worry about putting anchor pins down and fooling around with that kind of stuff. You have a heat press, throw it in the heat press for 10-15 seconds, about 250 degrees. Take it out, it'll be flattened right out. Be careful if you're going to use an oiled leather. I did some experimenting a while back with some oiled leather, and it actually caught fire. So that oil in there, for some reason, it flamed up. So that that didn't work out too well. So be careful if it's a heavily oiled leather. Just a little caution thing to put out there. But otherwise, not that much to it. Pretty simple. This is an easy beginner project, and those key fobs you can make some money with those, especially if you're into the craft shows and the pop-up shows and you have different crafts made. Come up with some custom designs. People are always looking for keychains, and they're inexpensive and easy to make. Again, I was using the Xtool D1. It's an older model. It's not the latest or greatest, the newest, but it works fantastic. I've been using it for years. I'll put a link in the description on where you can get one of these from Xtool. I'm sure they'd be glad to send you one. I'm not sponsored. I'm just putting this out there about what laser I'm using. So if you get anything out of this, appreciate getting a thumbs up. Always helps the channel. I'm Roger in the shop. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.